So this is going to be a stream of the Desert Perpetual lore. The way that I'm going to do this stream is I am going to first I have a video that I'm gonna watch where I edited all of the raids like cutscenes and dialogue together, including the quest dialogue, just to kind of like get a baseline for what the story of the raid actually is in the raid. And then once we've listened to that, um, we're going to dive into the raid lore itself, the lore book, the like armor set, ghost shell, whatever items from the raid have lore. I haven't actually read any of the lore from the Desert Perpetual yet, but I have listened to all the dialogue before, just not all in one sitting like this. So I think it'll be kind of interesting to get the like cohesive lore experience and story experience for the raid all at once, which is kind of the purpose of this stream, to do that and give you my reaction. So, without further ado, I'm going to get started and start playing this video. So this is the opening cutscene. And now we're going to have like each of the beacons from like the beginning and then before and after each encounter that has the initial like raid dialogue. So I believe there's 9 of these. There's this first one, and then there's one before each encounter and one after each encounter. So that'll make up like the base original story of the raid.
Dr. Chioma Essie, Team Point 50 of 227, calling from somewhere in the VexNet. In my escape from the Conductor's lab, I seem to have lost my bearings. I'm searching for stable coordinates, and for my partner, the Maya Sundaresh of the Point 87 team. That's a new receiver picking up my signal. Where are you, Maya? Where am I?
So this kind of like sets the stage for the raid. All the dialogue that we're going to be hearing is from different copies of Chioma SE and Maya Sundaresh that are in the Vex network. These are the original 227 copies that were created by the Vex to simulate the team. It also includes Dwayne McNiad and Dr. Shim. If you've read the lore before or you're familiar with the Vex lore, this comes from the Destiny 1 Grimoire cards about the Vex. I think there's like 5 or 6 of them that kind of like makes up the basis of this story. So this raid is kind of expanding upon those foundational Grimoire cards about Vex simulations and the Ishtar Collective. And it's kind of interesting that Chioma specifically says that she's escaped from the Conductor. Because for context, in episode Echoes, the Conductor gets control of the Echo of Command and goes through and basically searches the Vex network looking for all the simulations of Chioma to find the one that matches her timeline's Chioma. And in episode Echoes, if you've played Encore, you know that she finds the correct Chioma and kills her because that Chioma hates her and doesn't believe in her like quest for the Golden Age, to like basically remake the timeline and recreate the Golden Age of humanity using the Vex network. And we also get the specific like numbers of these Maya Sundaresh and Chioma Essie. The Maya Sundaresh is 87 and the Chioma Essie is 50. I don't know off the top of my head if there are specifically like if these specific members of Chioma Essie and Maya Sundaresh have showed up in the lore before, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have. Um, but it's kind of interesting that this Chioma encountered the conductor but survived and wasn't killed like all of the other Chiomas, which is kind of like setting the stage for the story of this raid.
The Maya Sundaresh of the Point 817. Where are you, Maya? Where am I?
If you're fighting the servants of my other self, then I wish you well. The Conductor was a monster to the hundreds of ourselves within the network. A phantom snatching tumors away in the dark. What a relief to finally have a target to aim at. Even if it's me.
So this is also like giving our first Maya dialogue, and it's also telling us how the different copies in the Vex network that are exploring, trying to learn about the Vex, learn about the universe, how they feel about the Conductor going in and taking and killing all of these Chiomas. They seem to hate the Conductor, which makes a lot of sense. If there was someone going and snatching up all the simulations of my wife, I would be kind of pissed too. So let's keep listening.
The death of your nine has left the Vex with a surplus of dark matter. It shouldn't accumulate like this naturally. They're studying how that dark matter interacts with materials superposed in space and time, across phase and dimension.
So this entry like gives us a little bit more about what's going on in the raid. It's connecting to the campaign where we learn that the Conductor, prior to the start of the Edge of Fate, went and killed 3, basically by using the Echo of Command to try to compel 3 to do something that's impossible, which is like recreate Earth's golden age. That killed 3, and then it like caused this massive problem. As we see in the campaign, 3 believes or has like seen the future and knows that 3's death will ensure humanity's extinction unless the Guardian can intervene. And so this is a kind of like after effect. This raid is the Vex's experimentation with dark matter that was released after the death of 3, because 3, like all of the 9, is made of dark matter. And so killing a member of the 9 means that all that dark matter is going to get dispersed, because it's like this sentient cloud of dark matter that I'm guessing was like combined in these like complex patterns that made up the like brain of the 9. And so it probably is like an explosion, although we don't really know what a death of the 9 means for dark matter, and I think that's something that Bungie is planning to explore further in the future. I know in Bife's interview with the narrative director Allison Lurs, they said that they're going to explore that in Renegades a bit, so we don't know exactly, but this raid is kind of like an after effect where the Vex, led by the Conductor, are looking into dark matter that has been like dispersed by the death of 3. Hello, Delta Gamer. Thanks for tuning in. All right, we'll continue with the next quote.
To my new listener, fluctuations in dark matter are destabilizing your local space. Be wary.
Point 87, Maya here. Chioma, what did she do to you?
Maya, is that you? The real you?
I am not the Conductor. How can I prove it?
I don't know.
Okay, so apparently Chioma has now noticed that it is not just Maya who's listening to her signals, it's the Guardian and their fire team that's in the Desert Perpetual and fighting the Vex there. And we also have this interesting like identity conflict now, which is that there's a version of Maya Sundaresh that's become the Conductor, and this version has a unique identity. So there's a specific Maya that like became the Conductor, but there's also all of these other copies of Maya that were the simulated copies that are running around in the Vex network. So now, like anytime someone runs into a copy of Maya, they're like, "Are you the Conductor or are you another Maya?" And I think that's kind of interesting because there's some interesting implications for like, are you Maya? Are you the Conductor? Are they the same person? Because they're like different, slightly altered copies of the same person. And they obviously don't have the exact same experiences, as we'll learn, but I still think that's a really cool avenue to explore.
Quantum entanglement. They are studying how disturbing dark matter in one place can affect matter distant in both space and time.
With precise enough control over their dark matter, the Vex wouldn't need to enter a timeline to affect it.
So this is talking about a real phenomena from quantum mechanics, which is quantum entanglement, which is this kind of interaction that occurs when you have a set of particles that are created that are like linked because of their joint creation. And there's this idea that Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance, which is that if you do something like take a measurement or alter the properties of one of the entangled particles, you can suddenly have information about the other entangled particle that's somewhere else in the universe at a different point in space. I'm less sure about how that would work over time and like the whole like multiversal implications of quantum entanglement. That's like more philosophy and not really science, but they're kind of going with the idea that you could potentially have different particles created that travel to different points in space and in time and potentially parallel realities. And you could use the entanglement of one particle that's in one timeline to affect the other timeline, which for the Vex is very scary because they are these basically like machine viruses that are propagating across the multiverse and trying to convert everything into themselves. Although now that they're being controlled by the Conductor, they have a bit of a different agenda, which is the Conductor's agenda. But the idea of the Vex being able to manipulate timelines that they're not even in is very scary because the Vex are like the biggest multiversal threat that we know of, given the fact that they play with the laws of physics in space and time.
The Vex are focused on cold dark matter. Their work is pulling at the bonds of real space, where it's tied to your location. A corner of unknown space.
The Conductor must be taken down. And don't tell me off for self-destructive impulses, Shioma.
Have I ever?
Once. Yes. Memorably.
So that's about like they're trying to stop the Conductor. Um the Vex are working with cold dark matter, which I'm not sure what the difference between cold and hot dark matter is in the Destiny context. But cold dark matter means that it doesn't have very much energy. So they're doing something with dark matter. They're doing something in unknown space, which is like the dimension that the Nine have control over and inhabit, which is partially where the raid takes place. I believe the hub location is an unknown space, and the other like three encounter spaces are in real space on Kepler somewhere. I'm not 100% sure about that, but that's what it seems to be implying, based on the raid. So using dark matter. The nine are made of dark matter. They're manipulating unknown space using that dark matter. So that's bad. um, the Guardian needs to stop them from doing that.
That Vex was running experiments on its own chassis, looking to neutralize the effects of the dark matter contaminating it.
Dark matter is inimical to the Vex. That's an advantage of ours we can't see taken away.
So this is explaining the Agrios boss, because this specific beacon comes after the Agrios encounter, which is... Or not Agrios. Agrios is the Hobgoblin. This is Iatros, which is the Wyvern. So the Wyvern is like experimenting with dark matter, trying to prevent the dark matter that's like corrupting it from distorting it, I guess. And so like that whole encounter is about like the interactions between the Vex and dark matter. So they're trying to stop the harmful effects of dark matter on the Vex. We've gained some intelligence, which is that the Vex are harmed by dark matter.
The Vex intend to digitize this place. Pull it whole into the VexNet. Why?
The Conductor wants control. I know my other self.
And I know you. You couldn't be her. Trust me, there's only one Maya I've ever had to shout at for self-destructive impulses.
So this tells us a little bit more about what's going on in the Koragos encounter. They are trying to pull part of unknown space directly into the Vex network to control unknown space. So they're trying to basically take control of some of the Nine's power using dark matter and gain that power for themselves, which is particularly powerful because we now know that the Nine are these like four-dimensional beings who interact non-linearly with time. So if they had control over a member of the Nine or like part of unknown space, they could potentially do some weird stuff like rewriting history, which is what the Conductor's whole goal is in the expansion. Obviously, 3 was not able to help the Conductor actually do that. But this is like another experiment trying to pursue that goal to recreate the Golden Age.
Real space is stabilizing again. It's done, Guardian. The Vex here was sifting for the locations of other sapient gravitic anomalies. In your terms, the other members of the Nine.
This one was commanded to trade the places of today's Earth with the Earth of my time. It failed and was punished. The Conductor will not accept a second failure.
So this quote is like probably the most important one in the whole raid. It's explaining what Koragos is doing specifically and what the Conductor's initial plan is here in the Desert Perpetual. Basically, Koragos is commanded to locate 3 in the past when 3 is still alive and trade the place of the living 3 from the past with the dead 3 from the present, which who knows what implications that would have. It would like completely mess with the timeline, and we don't know what that would mean for both the past and the present. Lots of bad time travel paradox stuff could happen if they're able to do that, which is part of why we stop them. Also because they're trying to take control of unknown space. But they're pulling some more shenanigans trying to take control of the Nine for the Conductor. Yeah, I know that the Nine can only pull things back in time. That's like established in the campaign. But the Conductor isn't really like accepting that, which is why 3 kills the Conductor. Or, sorry, I said that backwards. Which is why the Conductor kills 3 in the campaign, because she wants to be able to pull things from back in time to the present to make a new golden age. Whereas 3 knows that the 9 can't do that, so 3's like, I can't do what you're asking for. And this results in the conductor killing 3. But Maya is trying to, like, still trying to do that. And I don't think it's super clear if what the conductor actually wants here is possible, or if it's not. But that's what the conductor's goals are. We don't really know if she fully understands what the 9's rules are as we understand them.
This piece of unknown space remains connected to the Vex network. It presents an opportunity. Maya and I are at different points within the net. With you, we make 3.
3 points of triangulation. The first step towards a map. The Vex use their network for simulations. Billions of them layered one atop the other. At points of similarity, they converge.
Set down anchors at those points, and we can find every connected simulation. We can begin to chart the Vex net itself.
So this is them basically saying that Chioma and Maya want the Guardians' help triangulating and making a map of all the simulations that this part of unknown space is connected to, which is what's happening in the post-raid quest. And you can see that after that dialogue, we go into the post-raid quest, which is all about placing anchors. So before we were listening to these like patrol beacons that were tuned into the frequency that Chioma and Maya were transmitting on around the map. Now we're working with them directly. We're placing more of these beacons and anchors to triangulate the various simulations that are connected to this point in unknown space as a result of the conductor and the Vex's actions here.
Space-time is in flux here. Pin it down and we'll learn from it.
So this really doesn't tell us anything. She's basically like, plant this anchor, it'll tell us more.
A living gravitic anomaly. Dead at the hands of the conductor. A show of strength beyond even the Vex.
So the living gravitic anomaly is basically just another word for the sentient dark matter that makes up a member of the 9. So basically just commenting, oh, the conductor killed 3. That's really powerful and scary, which we kind of already knew.
The conductor plucked me from the Vex net and brought me somewhere else. After a time, she disappeared and a path opened. I took it. Now I couldn't tell you where I am within the Vex network. It's not a place with many landmarks. I'm grateful for the dataset we're putting together, for more than one reason.
So this is explaining more about how Chioma came to come to where she is, and how she survived her encounter with the conductor. She basically was plucked out of where she was in the Vex network by the conductor, and then when she escaped the conductor, she's been thrown into some pocket of the Vex network that she's not familiar with. So by like planting all of these anchors and charting a map of the connected simulations, we're helping her find her way back to Maya.
The simulated worlds within the Vex network are functionally infinite.
This is me making a mistake. I accidentally tab out here, forgetting that if you tab out of Destiny 2, the audio stops playing. So there's a point here where the dialogue cuts out. Apologies for that. This is the only recording I have, so I'm just going to read this Maya Sundaresh quote. You can pretend I'm Shore, the voice actor. The simulated worlds within the Vex network are functionally infinite. Convergence points narrow our task to a degree. And this next quote should play normally because I was tabbed back in.
Finding the needle in the haystack. Or microchip in the lab junk drawer, would you say? Apologies, Guardian. It's been some time since I've been able to talk to Maya. It's hard to stop myself.
And now they know about the second most embarrassing moment of my undergrad.
So this was like Maya and Chioma just kind of like interacting. And Chioma's almost like razzing Maya here for a mistake she made in the past. But also Maya's talking about how the simulations we're mapping are like infinite, and then there's like these points of convergence that we're using to make a map.
Pulling the coordinates. Almost. No. Damn. Lost it. Apologies, Guardian.
Even a negative result will contribute to our dataset.
So they weren't able to get the location that they wanted there, and they're basically saying, even if we make a mistake here, we can't get the correct coordinates. It'll help our data set by giving us some information rather than no information at all.
4 of us studied the Vex. Maya, me, and Doctors Shim and Dwayne McNear. We were each copied by the Vex 227 times precisely. I'm the Chioma of the 50th set. Together, we decided we would not be prisoners in the net, but explorers, researchers with infinite subject material.
World enough and time. Almost a dream. If not for the Vex themselves.
So this anchor is basically just backstory for anyone who hasn't read the Grimoire and isn't familiar with the Ishtar researchers who are simulated and copied by the Vex that then go out to explore the Vex network. So this anchor doesn't really tell us anything new if you're cued into the lore. It's basically just for people who haven't read the lore and are just like coming into this story now.
How can you not be angry with me for the Conductor's actions? I am.
She isn't you. As .50 Maya isn't you. You didn't trap me in a lab. I didn't break up with you on a simulated Pluto. Didn't the Vex's experiments teach us that? A shared baseline doesn't speak to shared results. Besides, the Conductor couldn't be you. She was too tall.
So this is more reflection on this like interesting identity question of like how similar are the simulated copies of Maya Sundaresh to the version of Maya Sundaresh that becomes the Conductor, and kind of like Maya's perspective is, oh, this is another version of me. I'm mad at myself for becoming this like monstrous figure. Where Chiom was like, no, you're not her. You're slightly different. You're shorter. She didn't have the same connection with me that you do, so you can't possibly be the Conductor. Don't blame yourself. Whereas Maya's like, but this is me. I feel responsible for the Conductor's actions and bad stuff. So it's kind of like a philosophical debate about whether or not versions of yourself from like simulations or altered timelines are like have the same identity as you.
Chioma, if we have a stable coordinate system, we could use it to find each other in person, instead of speaking only over radio.
You're just realizing this now?
I just worked up the courage to say it.
So this is Maya basically being like, hey, let's meet up and not just talk over the radio. And Chioma's like, you're just realizing this now? And Maya is like, I'm having gay panic. I wanted to do this before, but I was too nervous of rejection.
Guardian, the categorization system we built out for the VexNet works on the same principle we're using now, tagging variants of Vex simulations. I am in what we named Variation Row, of the Green Moon world. That's where you'll find me, Chioma, if you still want to.
So this is kind of like establishing a language for classifying the different simulations. Um, I guess there's like a variation, like name. This one is like the Greek letter rho. Um, and the green moon world, I'm not sure what that means, but that probably corresponds to a specific location in that simulation. So like the variation is the name for the simulation, and the green moon world is the specific location. So it's kind of like a coordinate system.
That's where you'll find me, Chioma, if you still want to.
Also on like a more personal level, it's like, hey, this is where we should meet up and say hi instead of just talking over the radio.
It's disorienting to be one among over 200 people bearing the name Chioma Essie. Disorienting to be plucked from what stability I had into the Conductor's lab. Then back in the VexNet. Lost. Alone. Our cartography work is one pillar showing me where it is that I stand. You're another, Maya.
This is more identity stuff and more like conductor action implication stuff, where she almost like, oh my gosh, it's confusing to be like one of 227 copies of the same person. And now working with Maya and the Guardian is giving me purpose again.
Yes, I recognize these coordinates. Maya, do you still have your notes?
Variation pi of the header archipelago, if you remember that one.
Strange to say, but after a lifetime exploring, some Vex simulations can feel almost home-like. Heather Phi was a good one.
So this is more like map coordinate stuff. They're reminiscing on a variation that they really liked visiting.
We've got our preliminary data set. Thank you, Guardian. We'll use this information to keep you posted on the Vex as we're able.
And Chioma and I will be able to find each other again.
Green Moon Row, you said? Wait right there. I'm coming to you, Maya.
I'll be here.
So we finished building our map of the Vex simulations by planting the anchors for them, and now they're gonna go meet up and be lesbian wives together in some Vex simulation.
We've charted paths within the network, learned more about the Vex, and Maya and I have found our way back to each other. All thanks to you.
Our work continues. We must rally the other exploratory teams. And we must stop the Conductor before she kills again. She may not be me, but I recognize myself in her. I owe it to Chioma to stop her. I owe it to myself.
So you're being self-serving.
It's part of my baseline. We may as well use it.
So this is basically the conclusion of the quest. They're like, okay, we successfully met up, and now they seem to be planning a kind of like rebellion of the simulated copies in the Vex network to try to go and like stop the Conductor's plans, and like overthrow the Conductor so that the simulated copies in the Vex network can go back to researching the Vex in their simulations without being like harassed and tormented by Maya Sundarash. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Internisus. I also feel the same way where like I've listened to all of these before, but I hadn't really like sat down and like internalized them without all the extra like comms and a raid and distractions and stuff. So this is kind of why I wanted to sit down and look at all the story like cohesively together instead of like as fragmented pieces in different like raid runs. So I'm glad that you're enjoying this. Maya Sundaresh versus the Conductor would be the cage match of the century. And we've completed the quest. My video is over. So now it's time to boot up Destiny 2 and start reading the lore. I haven't actually read any of the lore before. I've been saving it for this, so while I kind of already knew what was going on in the like video clips that I just showed, the rest of the stuff like the lore tabs and lore entries, I have not actually read. So this is what I was excited for because I went and used the secret chest to go gather all of the lore tabs in the lore book, and now we're going to read it, and I'm also going to go hunt down all of the items from the raid in collections to read their lore tabs. But I'm going to start with the lore book because the lore book usually tends to be like the best writing associated with a particular raid. It isn't always, but it tends to be the most cohesive. Okay, so we've got the lore book for the raid. It is called the Immanent. And based on what I've seen here, I think each one of these is like a message from a member of the Nine. Or maybe not. But it's like the numbers 1 to 8. So I'm going to read each of these entries and then kind of like talk about them afterwards, kind of like I've been doing for the quotes in the like video. The fall dissolves my body because I allow it. The radiolaria takes my consciousness into the network because I command it. I do not perish. I am not swept away by outside force. The waterfall accedes to gravity only upon my word. The lingering presence of Commander Taekwal in my C2 vertebra understands the value of a tactical retreat. At age 43, I stood on the edge of the citadel with a jar full of brains. 227 Maya Sundareshes, replicated by the Vex, readied in turn as weapons against them. Sappers, explorers, lab rats loosed in a maze. Venus was lifetimes ago, before Lhasa, before Neomuna, before the network and my new becoming. My Chioma stood at my side. Both of us in proxy suits, too fragile to walk under the shadow of the citadel in our own bodies. Weak, mortal, scared for our lives and those of our copies, trapped within a linear flow of time, unable to stand aside and see that this was the happiest we'd ever be. The only ethical choice, we believed, was to accept the copies' vote and release them into the network. We should have crushed the drives, broken the jars, strained the tadpoles from the water and poured them into an incinerator, instead of dropping them into the pond. None of those copies were my Chioma. None were the true me. Frameshift mutations instantiated by the Vex to torment us with what they knew and what was beyond our control. Photonegatives, skewing further and further out of alignment the longer they were allowed to exist in something approaching linear time. Those Venus Chiomas still walking the network, the lingering remains of the Vex's first assault on my life, are crude parasites, mimics of the real plant. Boquilia trifoliata, hoping the angles of their misshapen leaves will keep them from my notice. I know my Chioma, and she knows me. If she does not know me with the light of an echo around my neck, then she is not the true Chioma. She is a weed in the flower bed choking out a true rose. I control the variables. I command the Vex. There is nowhere that my Chioma can hide from me where I will not find her. There is nobody who can keep her from me. The waterfall at the heart of Nessus sweeps me into the information network and reassembles my body. The mantle on my shoulders sings with purpose as sweetly as ever. Tequal's memory guides me yet. A setback will not stop my work. One voice silenced will not end the chorus. I lift my hand, breathe, and let the baton fall. So this is kind of confirming that this whole entry is from Maya Sundaresh's perspective, the Maya Sundaresh who becomes the conductor. And this is also confirming the idea directly that the Echo of Command is an echo of Commander Tequal of, I believe, Tequal was Kyugyu. It's a reference to that lore book from episode Echoes that is about Tequal, which people pretty much figured out was about like the subject of the Echo of Command, but this is like more directly saying, hey, this echo is the lingering presence of Commander Tequal. It's all about command. So this is about like Maya's perspective becoming the conductor, and she's like regretting the choice to, as we saw in the Grimoire cards for the Vex in Destiny 1, consider the free wills of the simulated copies of Maya and Chioma and Dwayne and Dr. Shim, and they all voted, they all decided they wanted to be released into the Vex network to fight the Vex and learn more about them. And so the real versions of them decided to unleash those simulated copies on the Vex. But now, the conductor Maya, the like original Maya, is regretting that and saying, these are errant simulations that need to be destroyed. And this kind of like helps us understand her worldview and why in Encore she's going through the Vex network and killing a bunch of copies of Chioma. She doesn't see them as like real, fully fleshed people, which is very different from how the original like Grimoire cards for the Vex talk about them. They're referencing the simulation hypothesis, and they're like, philosophically, we can't tell the difference between simulated copies of a person and a real person, so therefore, these people are just as real as the original versions, because we have no way of knowing which one is the original version if we're one of the simulated copies. So Maya has come to, like, change her mind about this, and say that she is the only true Maya. There's one other true copy of Chioma that she wants to find. And then this last part here is like talking about and like kind of rationalizing her act to kill Chioma in Encore, the real Chioma, which is that if she doesn't recognize me as Maya even when I've got the Echo of Command, she's not the real Chioma. She's choking out what could be the real Chioma. So this is this kind of like weird and messed up and kind of like disturbing idea that if Chioma doesn't see me as correct and right and recognize me, then she doesn't deserve to live at all, which is a very messed up way of seeing things. But this is why she kills Chioma in Encore, the correct Chioma. And this is also kind of looking at her work. She's being guided by Tequal and the Echo of Command, and she's trying to remake the Vex for her goals to make the Golden Age. So I think let's move on to the second one. This first one was called Now and Hereafter. The second one is called To a Perfect When. It is not power that corrupts, but time. The pressure of the world bearing down over endless seconds until what was perfect is distorted, stretched, suspended. True preservation is impossible in the face of chronology. Even silver, purest of the conductive metals, oxidizes eventually. A prickle runs down my spine. The commander's mind blooms into a gold-edged life within mine. Advisor, ancestor, warden, so I speak. Find your goal, my few-limbed descendant. My goal? Chioma, where is she? She's waiting for me faithfully where she always has been. Before Neptune and its failures. We finished our contract on Venus. We concluded work with the Ishtar Collective on Earth. We parted ways for a time, working on separate problems, hoping, above all, to benefit humanity, to extend our golden age beyond death. A pure note, sustained indefinitely, in the willing air. That was the end. I just couldn't see it. A failure of perspective. The absolute threshold of my senses was not broad enough. Time and its corruption set in. Our first encounter with the Vex, sent in unanticipated directions. Who can remain whole after knowing yourself to be one of 228? What marriage can sustain so many empty futures? To hold your own soul in your hand is to grasp the infinite. The fingers don't close. Communion, allyship, sympathy. We will plan our attack with care. Venus in the Ishtar sink. That was when we were perfect. That was our golden age. The rot was sinking in by the time we reached Neptune, even before the collapse and the invasion from the outside. The Guardians call today the City Age, the era of a single metropolis walled in, under siege, a global population attenuated, weakened, scratching out cooking fires in the dirt covering a buried particle accelerator. They pick away at invader after invader, threat after threat. Failed strategy. They have assured the preservation of a world in ruins. My beloved languishes in the Golden Age, a secure present shattered by the oncoming future. She is not dead. She is not within the network. She has just unpacked her home office after years of storage. She's preparing summary papers and a slide deck for the collective board. She is thinking of her current work, her next contract, her 45th birthday in 2 weeks' time, which she hopes I will have remembered to plan for. And all the while, the neutron bomb of Damocles hovers over her head. A fleet of pyramid ships waiting to descend. Consider your assets. Consider your goal. Build the bridge between. What do you have? A golden past. My Chioma locked in a tomb under the rubble of the collapse. What do you have? A safe future unthreatened by the collapse and its inciting witness. Guidance. Strategy, ability. What do you have? A lever. Given somewhere to place it, I could move the world. So this is really interesting. This is giving us even more information about the Conductor's frame of mind and what, like, rebuilding the Golden Age means to her. So she was alive during the Golden Age. She was part of the Ishtar Collective. She was, it seems like, in her 40s or 50s when the collapse happened. And so this seems to have traumatized or scarred her, where she can't see humanity's like rebuilding after the collapse as like a legitimate thing. She sees it as an errant timeline, a destroyed ruin that's not ever going to be able to recapture the state that humanity was in and the abundance that they had in the golden age. So she's having like this nostalgia for the golden age and this nostalgia for the Chioma and her relationship that she had with her prior to the collapse. And so really emotionally, what she actually wants is to have Chioma back. Not the real Chioma that exists that she had on Neptune, that eventually grew horrified with her experiments on the Veil and creation of the Conductor. She wants the Chioma that doesn't exist, this like copy of her when their relationship was perfect and when there weren't any problems, and before that Chioma fell out of love with her. So it's kind of like emotionally grounding her whole quest for the Golden Age in her relationship with Chioma and her sense of nostalgia for the Golden Age that will never happen. And she does have some legit points here. The whole thing about like Chioma is obviously some like psychological damage going on here. She needs some therapy. Women would really take the Echo of Command and try to take control of the Vex before going to therapy. But really, I find her point about like, where did she actually say this? Scratching out cooking fires in the dirt covering a buried particle accelerator. I think this is actually kind of a salient point about the state that humanity is in after the collapse. They used to have all of this like great science, this great industry. They had the traveler, they had the light, they were expanding, they were thinking about colonizing other stars. Things were great. However, then the collapse happened and humanity was brutally shattered. And now they're just managing to subsist and survive rather than continuing to innovate and grow and build things like particle accelerators and a new Exodus fleet and leaving Sol. And so this is kind of commenting on the fact that the ambition of humanity has been crushed by the Black Fleet. Humanity can't leave Sol. They can't continue their project of expansion because of how much damage they took from the Black Fleet. And so this whole idea of rebuilding the Golden Age, it is emotionally about recapturing her marriage that fell apart during the collapse. But like logically, her justification is humanity is a shell of what was. It is like barely surviving when it used to be great. And that like is like a legit argument that I find compelling and really kind of grounds her character. And it's like, oh, she's kind of spitting here. Humanity could really be much more. They need to try to fully rebuild instead of being happy, like sitting in the city. And to some extent, humanity has been trying to rebuild. We've seen a little bit of that in the Destiny games, but this is kind of like a meta point. Like, we've been rebuilding the Destiny 1 tower for what, like 7 years, 8 years at this point? There's no like progression and no like rebuilding that's happening. And obviously it's like a decade. It's not that long of a time scale, but humanity's not really trying to rebuild a new golden age and fully like become a like fully fleshed out multiplanetary civilization. They're just focused on trying to survive, and that is like a totally reasonable thing. The whole like meta narrative of Destiny is about this idea of like golden age, societal collapse, dark age, rebuilding phase. And to some extent this is kind of like ahistorical, this like idea that's kind of fallen out of favor with historians about like golden ages and Dark Ages, where like there's a time when a civilization is great and then it goes into decline and then collapses, and like historians don't tend to call the Middle Ages in Europe the Dark Age anymore. Like they kind of like used to treat it as this like interregnum between the Roman Empire and the rebuilding of industrialization and like civilization. But this is like people were still living, they were still doing great stuff before the Renaissance. It just is that they weren't advancing as much technologically. And so Destiny's like story structure and history is kind of based on that historical idea. And so Maya is like a scientist who's like, I want humanity to be great again. I want humanity to build great wonders that we haven't seen for generations. When the rest of humanity is like, yo, girl, we're trying our best to survive here. We do not have the resources for particle accelerators. We got to feed the people who are here. And so they're far more focused on like practicalities, like defense, safety, agriculture, and the Conductor's villain origin story is my wife grew to hate me. My whole society collapsed and was ruined. So now I need to take things into my own hands and rebuild the Golden Age and make humanity great again. And it is such a compelling motivation. I think this writing is fantastic. Very, very reasonable. Very, like, you can totally see how someone could, like, come to believe this, which is how you write a compelling villain. But also a little bit unhinged. The stuff she's doing is like, this is not great. You should chill out a little bit, Conductor. Okay, so let's read the next one. 3. Down. Traveling the Vex information network means metaphor superimposed on the flat planes of reality. Technobiological synesthesia. How do I say this? I think these are German words. Merkwelt. Workwelt. Umwelt. I step through a portal held open by the calculations of a gate lord. I feel it in its true form as my Vex do, even as the human part of me grasps for interpretation. Fourier transforming down the crest of a wave, knowing the water is angry below. The water stills as I walk upon it, harmless to its master, my laboratory and my royal court. I incline my scepter and my Vex leap to test another variable for me. Somewhere in the network will be a record of the fulcrum I need, the power I require. If not within the bounds of my collective's testing, then outside of it. What I need is to observe without biasing the results. Pay me no mind. The light of my mantle dims and my footfalls grow silent. Around me my Vex forget my presence. I walk between them, a queen unmarked by any censor. Layer upon layer of networked simulations part for me as easily as curtains brushed aside. A world of glass cliffs reduced to glittering sand by the furious water below. Here the Vex test the limits of aquatic life and of Klein bottle manifolds. 18,064 simulations stacked like pages in a book. Failed attempts to predict and replicate light. Hundreds of thousands of prior attempts crumpled and burned. An Exodus ship-sized minotaur, a builder of builders, tests and iterates new chassis designs for its deputies, processing capacity, sensor networks, and physical balance on varying terrain and durability. One beta build clad in mismatched bronze plating plays jump rope with its own tails. Another carries Another carries a mechanico. No. Another carries a mechano-organic fetus within its ventral tank, radiolaria adhering layer by layer to its surface. Something trembling and vermiform darts through the ephemeral layers of a hypothesis, followed by thought predators feeding on the swarming krill of data points. Torabottle falls, rises, falls again. In tactical simulations more concerned with access to the servers of its Athenaeum worlds than anything else. I walk farther from home than any human before me, into simulations of worlds lit by stars, the first gleaming of which have yet to reach Earth's skies. Millions of worlds connected at unexpected points, staked out by different collectives for their own use. At the distance, all the storehouses of data and simulated tactics run through my fingers. And somehow, it's on my homecoming that I find what I need. So this is like Maya traveling through the simulations in the Vex network. She's observing simulations of far-flung star systems like Torabottle and their battle with Xivu Arath. And she's observing simulations of worlds that are so far away that their stars' lights have not yet reached Earth, which like would kind of imply that they're in like another galaxy. Or possibly they're just like on the opposite side of our galaxy and they're like new stars. But she's kind of like taking inventory of all of the Vex network simulations of different worlds and collectives, and she's trying to interpret them and use them for her plans. I do want to look up a few words here. I feel like I've heard of Merkwelt, Workwelt, and Umwelt, but I don't remember what they are. Oh, yep, these are robotics things. I believe that they were referenced in the Vex Grimoire cards as well. So I'm gonna pull these up. Okay, so I've got Wikipedia here. um okay, so it's basically like a way of viewing the world in robotics, and like a robot's ability to view the world and understand the world is Merkwelt, and it's part of this like theory from this guy Jacob Johann Fryer von Uexkul. Uexkul? Dang, that's a very German name. And Umwelt is like how a specific species observes and experiences the world. So this seems to be like philosophy of like androids and robotics. Interesting. So it's like meaning for a model of the world. And semiotics. Semiotics is complicated. It's Destiny loves semiotics. They absolutely love semiotics. Um, but it's basically like she's observing all these simulations. She's trying to understand and create meaning from these simulations like the Vex are, and her human mind is like struggling to comprehend everything that's going on in these simulations. So I'm going to move on to 4, the root of unity. I'm standing on a glass pier stretching out over a pale alkaline lake. I'm crossing a static charged field of snow. I'm sitting on a bench in front of a Parthenon frieze worn over millennia to near perfect smoothness. Necessary change. Limb in jaw beast's maw. No lone mind is sane. A prudent general accepts new perspectives. A prudent general wins the war. You're right. I need new tools. Refutation. Not tools. Allies. Listen. Attend to your ancestor. I rise from the bench. Dust off my hands. Exit the museum and drop my ticket stub on the way out. My tools are waiting. I command you. Pull on the helix and the strand reform. Eukaryotes wriggle, swell, collapse. Be otherwise. Eat the apple. Leave the garden. Make a choice that comes from something other than your collective. I need variations in tactics. I need your minds to be separate from others. Respect what I can give you. Minotaurs kneel as I pass, my hand trailing sparks over their chassis. Hydras still their cilia in respect. A hobgoblin holds up useless, shining pieces of scrap to weld to its body. Its hand is very steady as it applies the solder. Tell me why. Its hand jerks back. It lifts its face as a sunflower to that which gives it life. V. Directive. Original/hobgoblin. Equals observe. Equals judge. Equals enact. Or, if independent equals true, then directive modified/hobgoblin independent equals observe equals create equals build self other beauty. V. An aspiring artist, useless, a waste of mind. New eyes, new limbs, needed and necessary. Wrong, Taekwal. An army is more than its head. An army is nothing but its head. Your cephalopod cousins and their independently minded limbs are not the model I work from. I strip the charge from the useless hobgoblin's radiolaria in one brisk pass of my palm over its head. The now empty chassis falls as I spin the recovered energy into a sphere, like yarn into a ball prickling at my hand. I raise another from the sea. This one knows its maker. Tell me who you are. V. Directive. Original/harpy. Equals study. Equals compile. Equals serve. Or directive. Modified harpy conductor. Equals input required. I roll the marble of energy between my palms until it is smooth electrical waveforms, long and calm. The Vex lowers itself to my height at a thought, and I release the marble to let it sink into its huge bronze eye. Vast petals shudder and fold inwards. You'll do. So we've got like 3 different syntaxes here. I didn't mention this earlier, but this like colon syntax is pretty obviously things that Taekwal's like memory is saying to Maya. this is Maya's perspective in like normal paragraph form. And then the all caps, I think, is like commands that Maya is using the echo to give to the Vex. And then we have, for the first time, like Vex pseudocode. We've seen this in a few other entries. Not of this lore book yet, but like other things like Brass Gardeners from Inspiral and other lore. So it makes it kind of hard to parse, but if we look at this code, basically what it's saying is that this hobgoblin's original directive is to observe, judge, and enact. Or if it's independent, then its directive is to modify the hobgoblin, observe, create, and build to create itself and other beauty. So this is like how Maya understands that it's an artist. Basically, the hobgoblin is saying, if it's not independent, then it will observe, judge, and enact. If it is independent, then it's going to modify itself and create beauty and art. And so Maya's kind of displaying this worldview where she sees the Vex as disposable and their like individuality and their creativity is not useful, and they're only useful in terms of like how they can be used as soldiers. But Taekwal is kind of like dissenting here and like saying that there's value in building new types of Vex for the Conductor's, like, brood would be the wrong word, her division of Vex. But Maya's like, no, the Vex I have are fine. I can use them. I don't need this hobgoblin to build new Vex for me. I think Taekwal is right, personally. Like, iterating on the architecture of the Vex could allow them to create new weapons, create new things, and advance their goals, even if it's not directly applicable to combat or like Maya's goals in the moment. Like, allowing for some like independence and some like creativity can help you achieve your goals in unexpected ways. So this is kind of like this whole idea of like independence versus following orders and creativity versus following orders. And Maya is using the echo to basically be like, you need to follow my orders. But her individuality and her commands are giving the Vex, who normally are not individualistic, and they're more of like a hive mind that doesn't have individuality, we're seeing them start to gain their own identities and gain individuality and start to be independent, which is really interesting. The like Conductor and Echo of Command's presence is basically forcing the Vex to evolve and become like new and grow. So it's really interesting. Maya's kind of like discarding this because she's kind of seeing the Vex only as like tools and not really as like individuals. But that individualism could be helpful to the Vex, and we could see the Vex start to like break away from the Conductor, as we saw with Sharp Cheddar in the side quests for the Edge of Fate. And the Conductor seems to be making a mistake here, which could be related to this idea that she's starting to lose control over some members of her like schism of Vex who are gaining their own identities and starting to rebel. And it's also this like idea of like conforming versus non-conformism in like a military, where militaries, because they want their soldiers to follow orders, they tend to emphasize like conforming and flatten out individualism in favor of following your superior's orders. But that individualism can sometimes help an army if someone realizes that the orders that they're being given by their superiors are wrong, like morally or tactically, and then they might speak up and say, hey, this is a bad idea, or here's a better idea, or they'll rebel. And the Conductor seems to want conformity, seems to want the Vex to just be tools for her to wield as she wants. And basically be like, I'm commanding you, I'm in charge, you do what I want, you don't get to have your own identities. And so she's like discarding this hobgoblin in favor of a harpy that's willing to study, compile, and serve the directive of the Conductor. So I think this is like a tactical mistake. And Taqual is kind of trying to point that out in this entry. 5. Eternal life. The Vex keep their hypotheses in quarantine, tested and iterated on until they are ready for distribution. My lungs fill with salt water. I grow gills, filtering life from the sea of data. What compost have you turned over for me, my creatures? I make myself anew. Humans have poor magnetoreception. I neglected the sense when building my body. A failure of oversight solved by the addition of digital cryptochromes. Ampullae of Lorenzi and a neuromast while I'm at it. Any information is good information. The wheat may be sorted from the chaff later. Open the door. I slip in and out of network and real space, quick-stepping through the hollows of space between bodies, spiraling out towards the Oort cloud through Mercury's burning sands and the radioactive winds on Luna. The umwelt of pure radiolaria is different from that of a goblin within its bronze chassis. The umwelt of a hydra is different from that of a goblin. The hobgoblin's sensory horns take in different data than a harpy's cilia. They each serve different needs within the collective. The collective's multiplicative umwelten all feed into mine. They, the microorganisms within my holobiont, and I, the controlling intelligence at its center. Spread out. My Vex disseminate across the system, ants on the hunt, bringing home information to their queen. I know what I am searching for, if we can only find the right tool for the quest. A magnetosphere is abruptly useless, chaff tossed out on the wind. It is gravity that beckons my attention. I sideslip through the system towards an interesting aberration, a tangled clump of dark matter. My goblins sift through human computer networks, bringing me a name, Cocytus. This is not a place anyone wants me to be. I suborn the warheads. I take over the gates. I stalk the land with my tools. Gravity moves in the dark. It whispers against my cheekbones and pulls me down. Fine strands of dark matter move around me and through me. How do we solve the hard problem of consciousness? One theory suggests increasingly complex electrical wave patterns, sustaining those complex waveforms through an affected substrate. Electrical impulses through brain matter. Another kind of impulse through dark matter. Vast, dispersed minds, thinking and acting across distances and timelines broad enough to confuse even the Vex. Gravity's reach is long and greedy. The sun's dragging influence on space-time barely wanes before Proxima Centauri asserts itself. Space-time accounts for more than physical dimension, and gravity works its effects upon all. These consciousnesses, finely spread across such a distance, must work within the dimension of time in a way that differs from the Vex. Else, a single thought would take years to vibrate across their superstrings. Else, a collective would have consumed them long ago. Here is the key to my heart's desire. Here is how I reach you, my life. A theory of the Cocytus gates assembles itself. Not all the pieces, but enough for now to build out and test a hypothesis. If I am right, there are powers within Soul, huge and silent and untapped, waiting to be commanded. If I am right, there are 9 of them, macrobiomes of vast holobionts, sustained by the complex life of Soul's microbiome, living off the mitochondria of human spirit, roaming through time as a human roams through space. If I am right, then they have minds, and that which has a mind, I may command. So this whole entry here is about the Conductor discovering the 9. So this whole Cocytus thing here, this is referencing the gates of Cocytus, which originally are mentioned in a grimoire card from Destiny 1 about Dead Orbit, I believe, and then they're expanded upon in Destiny 2, particularly in the lore book Dust, where Lavinia's investigation into the 9 takes her through the gate of Cocytus, and then she meets the 9. They give her their declaration, they assert themselves, and they explain that they're sentient dark matter. So this whole entry, Eternal Life, is basically about the Conductor learning of the existence of the 9 by looking at Cocytus and by looking at the, as Ikora says, the gravitic anomalies across Soul, which basically is like a fancy way to describe dark matter, and a fancy way to describe the fact that this dark matter is sentient and spanning the entire Soul system. And then it's also kind of building upon this idea of like non-linearity and explaining it through science. Basically saying they're so large, they're made up of such a distance that in order for their neurons to fire, they can't interact linearly with time. If they only interacted linearly with time, it would take them like years, decades, centuries to have a single thought, to have the neurons fire across that vast of a distance. And so the idea is that the dark matter is clumped in a way that allows them to perceive time non-linearly. This is kind of like a hand-wavy justification of like, oh, the Vex, or not the Vex, the 9 are non-linear. Their minds are magical. And so allowing them to be these conscious minds that are spread out over such a large amount of space and such a like lack of density. And this is kind of showing Maya's purpose in the Edge of Fate, which is that she learns of the 9, she realizes they interact with time non-linearly, and she's like, oh, I can use this. They have minds that I can command with the Echo of Command. I can force them to create the Golden Age. I can force them to give me the memory of Chioma, my dead wife, back to me, and to give humanity their Golden Age again. And I'm assuming that the future entries are going to expand upon this, but it's basically telling us this is what her plan in the Edge of Fate was. And this is why, as soon as she learned of the existence of the 9, she immediately goes and tries to command the 9 to serve her goals, and hopes that their ability to interact with time non-linearly will allow her to reach into the past and pull things from the past to the present in service of her goals. I did want to look up a few words here because these sounded like technical information. I think biology. There's more Umwelt stuff. Oh, this is also more about magnetosphere. Was she talking about magnetosphere in here? No, this is the magnetosphere entry. So, okay, yeah, she's talking in here about how humans don't have the ability to detect magnetic fields, but some animals do. So she's like, oh, I need magnetoreception so I can understand these simulations of the Vex. Um, and then this is like observing the Vex network. She's discovering the Nine through the Vex's understanding of the Sol system. Oh yeah, holobiont. This is a word that I'm unfamiliar with, so I wanted to look it up. I see. So it's like symbiosis, an ecological unit. So they are individual species that collectively together create like a combination of species that are working together collectively in symbiosis. So this is like the way she's using holobiont here is looking at like, oh, I am the center of this holobiont. I am the host. And the Vex are kind of like her symbiotic species that she's commanding using the Echo of Command. And she's seeing herself as the controlling intelligence in a collective of species serving the same goal or serving like compatible goals in a collective. Oh, and this also is kind of explaining how the minds of the Nine work. Based on a theory. So there's like theories in neurobiology about human brains communicating through electrical impulses, which are like referred to as brainwaves. I don't know very much about neuroscience, so I can't really talk about that, but she's basically comparing the way that a brainwaves moves through the human brain to like the waves in the dark matter that form the thoughts of the brains of the Nine. And then also this is like saying, oh, the Vex behave with time non-linearly to some degree. They're like looking at simulations in different timelines across universes, but the Nine are interacting with time in a way that's even different from the Vex, who have more of a mastery over time, the timeline, and time travel than humanity does. But the Nine, they're like perceiving all of the timeline at once, as we saw from the Nine lore, and also the campaign. And the specific Nine lore I'm talking about is Anamorphosis, which has some stuff about the like thoughts of the Nine and experiencing a tragedy that happened in the past in the present. And so she's basically like, these are giant minds, giant like beings of life that are in a symbiotic relationship with Soul's life. Soul's like biomes of life. And it's kind of like connecting to this idea of the Nine as being dependent on Soul's life for their consciousness and their ability to survive. And the Conductor wants to make use of their minds. So let's move on to 6. You and I and I and you. I'm standing on a hilltop in a simulation of the Gamma Cepheid system and thinking that with the time surrounding me, 40 years is a rounding error. 40 years separate Venus's Maya from Neptune's. 40 years between when I sent my copies into the Vex network and when I stepped in on my own. A drop of sea in time, washed away in unending diluent. I'm lying. That isn't what I'm thinking. My first thought was this. Was I ever that small? Memory shakes itself out like crumbs from an upended drawer. Before I became more than I had been, I had to buy a step stool for every apartment and residency I ever lived in. Wind-tossed heads of pink alien grain brush her knees. The light from Cephii's binary stars gleam off her worn exploration suit. Ishtar logo still spilling over the left shoulder. Her shadow crawls up the hill, unable to reach me just yet. 2 figures bracket her. Neither one is a copy of Chioma. Hello. We're the 202 Ishtar Exploration Team. Are you one of Dr. Bray's exos? Dwayne McNead's voice projects from a speaker at his neck. Their false little Maya is silent, stiff, wary. I smile down upon her. I'm much more than that. Their reaction to my voice is gratifyingly instant. Maya steps forward. Shim steps back. Dwayne McNiad reaches for the radio at his waist. Don't bother. His hand freezes at his hip. The little Maya glares up at me. Dwayne McNiad. Shim. She snaps to her colleagues. Go. Leave me alone with this maniac. Keep your radios open. Don't argue. We're not leaving you to die like Chioma did, the copied Shim says. A man I haven't thought about in a lifetime, give or take 40 years. But Dwayne McNiad pulls him away. I allow it. The copied Maya shakes an accusing finger at me. I could slice it off. With a thought, a wave of my hand. I could summon a horde of Vex such as she's never seen before. It's valuable to have assumptions and hypotheses tested. Peer-reviewed even. If I considered her my peer. This poor copy will serve for a rubber duck test. You're the figure behind all the Chioma disappearances. What did you do with all of them? I eliminated variables, snipped a few hanging threads. I smiled down upon her, a benevolent deity. Euthanized some lab rats. I don't know who you are. I don't know if you're me, if you ever were. Perhaps you're lying to get a rise out of us. Perhaps you're just that cruel. There are tears running down her face below the helmet, and yet her voice is admirably steady. I am what you could have been, if not for the corruption of time and the Vex, I tell her gently. You were doomed from the start, fragile copy that you are. Pain in her eyes, her face, her posture, and yet she doesn't stop. That persistence we share. We voted to go in. We voted to explore. Each of us had our own vote. Each of us, a whole person. What happened to you, Maya? I don't care for some of my alternates, but even the worst of them doesn't approach this callousness. Are you still human? Have you exiled yourself from all feeling? You see a corner of the room and think you understand the whole building. I lay a hand on her shoulder. I feel the pulse of her blood through her suit. The complex, but ultimately predictable, electrical waveforms of her mind. She is not beyond analysis, beyond corruption, beyond death. The look she gives me through her visor is cutting. I experience a moment of vertigo. The face I used to wear, caught briefly in a mirror at an unfamiliar angle. A moment again, and it's gone. I've had enough. There's nothing left to learn from this encounter. We're done here. 3 Ishtar-stamped exploration suits crumple to the ground, disturbing the alien barley. And Gamma Cephi turns about itself in the imagined sky. Sorry, I just had to take a drink of water there. This is interesting. It's kind of like expanding on her perspective on the different copies in the Vex network, and she's kind of showing that she's kind of a psychopath. I don't know if she would be clinically a psychopath, but she's like, she doesn't see them as human. She sees them as predictable. She sees them as lesser. She doesn't see them as her peers. And this whole like 40 years business is kind of giving us a timeline for some of the events of the collapse in Neomuna. So we know that about 40 years of time happens between the Ishtar Collective studying the Vex and sending out the copies into the Vex network. Then the collapse happens. Then the Exodus Indigo lands on Neptune and discovers the Vex there and the Veil, and Maya starts experimenting with the Veil, and then eventually she becomes the Conductor. So all of those events span about 40 years. Obviously, a lot more than 40 years has happened since then, because we know based on like the Edge of Fate campaign that it's like hundreds of years since the collapse, and like all of Destiny lore is talking about how it's been hundreds of years since the collapse, but we don't have like definitive dates. But this gives us like a relative sense of time for Maya Sundaresh's journey from being an Ishtar researcher all the way to becoming the Conductor. And those 40 years like change her. And then she spent like hundreds of years as the Conductor in the Vex network. So she sees 40 years as like just a small amount of time. But that 40 years really makes the whole difference between like her past self, her happy life with Chioma, her personal golden age, from her time as the Conductor, growing nihilistic, growing disillusioned with reality after the collapse shatters humanity, and becoming the Conductor, losing her wife. and she kind of like manipulates this Maya. It's more stuff about like identity, more stuff about like Maya being a reflection, and like the difference between a simulated copy of Maya and between the version of Maya that released her simulations into the Vex network, along with Dr. Shim, along with Chioma, along with Dwayne McNiad. They she goes through this trauma that changes her, which is the collapse. She sees humanity destroyed. She can't get over that. It causes a rift in her marriage with Chioma. It causes her to like kind of retreat into her mind and become like arrogant, become like condescending to everyone else and being like, oh, I need to get back to the past. I need to get back to my nostalgia for the golden age and my nostalgia for the early time in my marriage with Chioma before things fell apart, before she came to see me as a monster for my research into the Veil. And she's kind of like viewing humans through this like weird alien lens where she sees individual humans as small and tiny, and she sees herself as this like great vast being as the conductor in the Vex network with the Echo of Command. So she's kind of like lost touch with reality, and she's kind of like gone into her head and become a bit of a monster. And that's why Chioma, as we like see in the Veil, like the Parting the Veil audio logs, that's why Chioma comes to hate her. That's why Chioma becomes horrified with her. It's that she kind of like descends mentally because of the trauma of the collapse into this like state where she doesn't see things as real. She doesn't have regard for other people's humanity. She sees herself as like a superior being above everyone else. And obviously, if you had this wife who you loved and who was your scientist partner and who you spent a lot of time with, like a huge personality change like that would be very upsetting. And you can totally understand Chioma being like, what the fuck is wrong with you, Maya? Like, what are you doing? This is unethical and horrible. And so Chioma doesn't seem to have had her like worldview and perspective as fundamentally altered as Maya did from the collapse. Also, hi Iko. Basically, like this is like more Maya is so far up her own ass and drinking her own Kool-Aid that she like has descended into this horrible worldview where she doesn't see people as real. And I guess you could like totally buy the idea that you don't see a simulation or a copy of yourself or as human. Like that's a little bit more realistic. But this kind of like, I guess realistic is the wrong word. That's a little bit more understandable. But this whole like worldview of being like above everyone else, used to everyone following her orders, used to being able to command anyone to do whatever she wants. This is kind of like destroyed her humanity and destroyed her empathy. And we can kind of see this reflected in the other Maya who's like, what is wrong with you? Why are you so cruel? Why are you trying to get rid of us? Why are you seeing the simulated copies of us as lab rats? And they're obviously horrified. But Maya is defiant. She sees it's herself. She thinks she can get through to this version of herself, but she can't. And so the conductor kills the simulated copies. And that's what the title of this is about. You and I and you. They're like reflections of each other. Okay, so the next one is 7. The last time we were apart. Varanasi, where I was born. Zurich, where we met. Tafilet, my first lab posting after we got our doctorates. And the mouth of the Moloya, where you yelled in my ear with incomprehensible joy at seeing an Audouin's gull. Alcantara, where we sat for weeks in a hospital for decontamination before they would let us fly back to the academy on our return from the Ishtar sink. We joked about their bad coffee and single-serve pudding cups for years afterwards. Earth was a foreign country after Venus's swamps, startlingly harmless. Only we knew what it was like to hold yourself in your own hands and let go. There was nothing that could hurt us on Earth except putting a hand on a hot stove. Not like going too far without a rebreather, hazarding ourselves too carelessly in the laboratory, or unwisely taking citizenship with the North American Empire. It took time for us to remember how to be human amongst humans. Decades of work following, sometimes apart, sometimes together. Then Hyperion for you and Lhasa for me. Our two lonely mountains 900 million miles apart. Lhasa, where I sat and looked into the future and learned to fear what I saw. Now the town is overgrown and wild, with shrubs crawling down from the mountains. White paint has flaked off brick, and dust has blown in. The high paths here were hard for the Maya who was. Thin air, high slopes, short legs. She took it as a challenge the rare times she remembered the world outside of her lab. There's no difficulty here for me. My body is perfect. Hydraulics in my fabricated knees take me up step by step, without effort, without sound. I summit the peaks as easy as slicing a Vex gateway. I summit the peaks as easy as slicing through a Vex gateway. In my time, the lab sat on a rising slope away from the center of the town. Old models, new materials, ultra-strong alloys, light-fast pigments, concrete and rebar below the self-leveling floor compounds. No copper needed for the foundations. Now broken windows and leaves are strewn across the floor. Empty fittings at the center of the labs. Scavenged remains stolen away to the last living city on Earth. Lakshmi's project built out of the ruins of my work. She made a mess of things, my little alter ego. No sense of proportion. When I find my Chioma again, we'll laugh. Look, I'll tell her. You have 127 false copies. Oh, I think this is a typo. It should be 200. You have 227 false copies. I'm plagued by 228. You approach unity quicker than I. I always knew you were nearly perfect. Time has ruined this valley. Time and poor stewardship. No simulation, yet it feels false. My heart, my happiness, my life, all locked away in another time. They could be mine again if I can make a trade. An age for an age, lead for gold, the alchemist's unrealized dream. I walk towards a window. There's broken glass on the floor, but it does me no harm. Not now that I'm perfect. Dry wind blows in my face. The dust it carries pulling at my clothes and sliding off my metal and ceramic skin. This body of mine doesn't cry, Chioma. A weakness I've lost and almost don't miss. The wind doesn't smell the way it did when I wrote to you, my beloved, but it will. So this is kind of poetic. It's giving us more background info about Maya's history. She's born in Varanasi, which, where is that? It's in India. That makes sense. She met Shioma in Zurich, Switzerland. Um, Tafil Tafilalet. I don't know how to say that, but it's a part of Morocco apparently. I'm googling these on my other monitor. um, the mouth of Moloya. Oh, it's a river in Morocco, so it must be by Tafilalet. Yeah, I do think it's very fair to say that the conductor has a few screws. That's the understatement of the year. Um, and then where is Alcantara? It is a municipality in Spain and a district in Libsyn, Portugal. So Spain or Portugal. And then this like decontamination is referencing the fact that after they discovered their copies in the Vex network and their simulations, they were able to contact Rasputin for help. He saved them from the Vex network, and then they underwent like decontamination procedures at Rasputin's command on Venus. And then they go back to the Academy from the Ishtar Sink, which it sounds like was in Spain or Portugal, um, somewhere in the Iberian Peninsula. And then they're kind of like coming back. So this is like her reminiscing on her life story and returning to Venus after like being there and studying the Vex and having this like very scary encounter with the Vex where you discover they're simulating you. And the North American Empire, I think this has been mentioned a few times in Destiny lore, that sometime during the Golden Age, North America is an empire of some kind that like is kind of looked down upon by some other municipalities on Earth. Um, could be going in that direction in real life. We'll see. Unfortunately. um, and so they're like coming back to their humanity, and then after on Earth they take different postings separate from each other. I think this is also somewhere else in the lore, definitely Destiny 2 lore. Hyperion, which is it's one of the moons of either Neptune or not Neptune, either Saturn or Uranus. I believe it's Uranus. Oh, it's Saturn. It's the eighth largest moon of Saturn, according to Wikipedia, which makes sense. So it would be close to Titan. Um, and then she's in Lhasa, which is mentioned elsewhere in the lore. I'm gonna look this entry up specifically because it gets mentioned. Yeah, so this is returning to the 40 years. So the 40 years is like a taken thing. So this must have happened just before the collapse. And this is about their distance. And they're working with Vex. Oh, so this is, yeah, this is what I thought it was. It's like Maya's experiments into Vex technology that then are um related to the um let's see. They're in the Deepstone Crypt Journal. Um and I'm pretty sure the Clovis was building off of Maya's work if I'm remembering right. I don't know if Lhasa gets mentioned specifically. Is this document searchable? It is. So Lhasa doesn't get mentioned. Please load. Oh, right. Because now I'm remembering. So Clovis in the Deepstone Crypt Journal, he like spies on the Ishtar Collective and he steals their research into the Vex and then incorporates that into his exobody project to create um, exos. And then there's this like weird like Vex copy of Dr. Sundaresh that like haunts him. Um, Yeah, so this is reference this is like connected to both this grimoire card where they're like doing Vex research and like trying to create like and understand Vex biology and use it for humans. And then Clovis eventually steals that research, builds upon it, and then creates the exos from it. So that's what Lhasa is about. Um And so it seems to be that this like Lhasa experiment is when Maya starts to lose it. Um she sits and looks into the future. She fears what she sees. So she's participating in these like unethical human experiments with Vex technology that Clovis later steals and builds on. And then she starts to see like her conception of the world unravels and then this like permanently alters her relationship with Chioma, and then the collapse happens, and Clovis builds the Exos shortly before the collapse. The timeline's very compressed with the Exos and the collapse. This is something that I've been wondering about or thought about a lot, which is the fact that the Clovis Exos stuff seems to happen like right before the collapse happens. Um, and yet exos are kind of like all across Sol. I guess that's probably a function of humanity being like a multiplanetary species at that point. Um, but they propagate throughout Sol very fast, even though like based on the timeline, we don't have like exact dates, but we know that it's very shortly before the collapse, like one of the last events before the collapse happens, that the exos are created. And then that like matches this timeline of like the 40 years between Lhasa and the Ishtar research, where they're cloned and simulated by the Vex. And so this like lead for gold is like her talking about wanting to trade the current reality with her past that she's nostalgic for, which is her personal golden age. And she's like horrified by the future. She's horrified by the state humanity's in. She's horrified by the fact that her new worldview and her like changed sense of self has caused Maya to leave her. And so it's like this growing rift in the marriage of Chioma and Maya that's caused by Maya looking into the Vex at Lhasa and then like starting to lose her humanity and become the monster that is the Conductor. And then she's also talking about her copy because, as we know in the from the Parting the Veil like audio logs, Lakshmi 2 is an exo who dies because the veil interacts with the paracausal darkness that makes up half of the substrate for the exo mind. And then Maya, the one who becomes the Conductor, takes all the exos and uses their bodies to run experiments on the veil and eventually projects her mind into Lakshmi 2. And then that copy is the one that is dropped off on Earth by the Cloud Strider Stargazer and then goes on to become Lakshmi 2, the character in Destiny and Destiny 2. And so that's not the Maya that is the Conductor. It's like a copy of her mind, with the divergence being before Maya kind of like transcends her physical body and goes into the veil and the Vex network. And then eventually that Lakshmi dies. We see that in this entry that Maya has kind of a disdain for Lakshmi 2 because Lakshmi 2 kind of sucks. Which, like, fair and real. She is not the greatest person, and she really screws up in Season of the Splicer. And then eventually dies. And so then, at some point afterwards, we don't know for sure, but we can kind of assume that Maya co-ops Lakshmi's body again after Lakshmi dies in Season of the Splicer, before she reemerges as the Conductor in episode Echoes. So let's move on to 8, Gloria Mundi. This, I know, is Latin for glory to earth. You can thank the Bible for that knowledge. Okay. You sit there, 9 parasites latched onto the heartbeat of the world, untouched by time, by electromagnetism, by nearly any force I could name. All you need is a gravity well and the mines to fill it, and you're still afraid. Concern, alarm, rashness. Here I'll solve your every problem. You'd like some life to pattern yourselves against? I'll give you life by the bucketful. Calm your thinking. Descendant success is not found in haste. Oh, wait, no, this is... Calm your thinking, descendant. Success is not found in haste. One golden earth brought forward into a painless future. Another, corroded, wasted, emptied, sent back to take its place and bear the weight of the collapse. Listen to your ancestor. Listen. The Guardians can face it head on, just as they were always meant to. Listen. Come, coward. Bring her back. Dead air. A high ringing tone. God itself has developed tinnitus. Sten. The mantle has never weighed so heavily on me. The crack of Taekwal's fading voice scatters golden pain down the arc of my vertebrae. The death throes of Earth's failed leech are long and reverberate through space-time. It takes their full length to drag myself upright again, hold my shoulders straight again, recover a sense of the commander in my spine, and with it, an ache like a hollow tooth, a struck tuning fork, a droplet of water shivering on an unsteady leaf. I'll have the life I'm owed. I will have my golden age. I'll perform the trade myself. Your wretched siblings can't hide from me forever. Hi, Abyss. So, okay, this is interesting. I'm guessing, I mean, it's pretty obvious that this is basically Three's death from Maya's perspective. And so killing Three by trying to command her to bring Chioma back kills Taekwal as well. Or if it doesn't kill Taekwal, it causes Taekwal to like deteriorate. And it also seems to like kind of start to break the echo of command by trying to force it to command a sentient being to do something that's impossible, which is bring back this version of Chioma that doesn't exist. So and then this part here is like what the plan for Maya going forward is. And this is referencing what happens, like the dialogue in after Corregos in the Desert Perpetual, which is that Corregos was commanded by Maya to trade Three from the past when Three is still alive with the present dead version of Three, and then Corregos fails. And so it seems like she's saying that she's going to try to trade past Three with future Three herself, rather than trying to get a Vex Mind to do it for her. And she's still focused on this idea of getting Chioma from the Golden Age, which now this reveals that that is what she came to Kepler to do, and what she was trying to command Three to do. And then because it was impossible, that command killed Three. So that's really interesting. And then she's also talking about your wretched siblings, which is Three's siblings. So she's going to try to take control of the rest of the 9. So it seems like there's going to be like 2 different things going on in the Fate Saga. We're going to have this idea after the message from Three, where the Guardian and the Vanguard are going to try to bind the 9, whatever that actually means, to prevent humanity from going extinct. Meanwhile, the Conductor is going to be going to the 9 and trying to take control of them, which potentially could cause a massacre and just keep killing more members of the 9 because she's trying to force them to do something impossible. So it seems like the Conductor is going to be the like primary antagonist of the saga. If she might not necessarily be like the primary antagonist, but she will be one of the main antagonists. We will fight her tangibly as we're trying to bind the Nine as well. So it seems like we're going to be in conflict with both the members of the Nine that we're trying to bind and the Conductor and her Vex as they fight for their own agendas and goals as we try to prevent humanity from going extinct, as 3 said. So this entry is huge. Because Taekwol is like, hold on, hold the phone. Take a step back. You're not gonna find success by being hasty about trying to do this big thing. But Maya doesn't listen. She's too focused on her goal and her nostalgia for that version of Chioma that doesn't exist anymore, who's still in love with her, and trying to create this like impossibility of swapping the golden age of Earth with the current timeline, trying to create a timeline where the golden age never ends, which I'm pretty sure from the Vault of Glass, like some of the lore related to Praedyth, we know that the Pyramid Fleet comes and attacks Earth in like pretty much every timeline that we know of and every simulation. So it seems to be that she's looking for a timeline that doesn't really exist. This is some great lore. And I think it really sets up the saga and sets up Maya really well. This whole lore book is really kind of like an exploration of Maya's psychology, her emotions, her goals, her plans. It's called the Immanent. Which I have just Googled the definition of that word. It means existing or operating within, inherent. So I'm guessing that it's like the immanent being like the inherent properties of reality. And it's got the 3 symbol on the cover, which is also like the raid symbol, the 3 with the spokes. So it's about the like physical properties of reality and of 3 that Maya, the Conductor, is trying to alter. Okay, so now that we've done the lore book for the raid, the Immanent, I also want to look at the items and the lore tabs for the items. So in collections, we've got the armor. That does not appear to have a lore tab. Do the weapons have lore tabs? So this shell has a lore tab. The soloist shell. For ghosts who rise above the chorus, there are points in the chronographic distance, forwards and backwards, where intersections align and celestial conversation ripples across spatial fabric. In the folds of one such intersection, a soul's syzygy of nefarious thought and lurking density. Exchanges radiate an influence. A bevy chirp choir echoes out in silent radio wave song, cast from Jovian mass and royal. Space receives along the alignment. 5. Gather. Gather in proposed divergence. To control a virtue... Gather in proposed divergence to control a virulent eternal sentience, unbound by orbits, unbound by mass, nearer apathetic to our emotions. Okay, I'm going to read this again because 9's writing is really hard to read. Gather in proposed divergence to control a virulent eternal sentience, unbound by orbits, unbound by mass, nearer apathetic to our motions. 5 has found an intermediary to vast minds, reaching with frail mineral forceps, attempting to command, a tool of schisms, a steady indecipherable hiss. A steady indecipherable hist builds across the vast expanse, shrill and discomforting. A half-heard whisper evaporates into dark, paradoic phantasms. Assurances are necessary. Oh wait, this is 8. 8. Assurances are necessary. The conductor is quantum uncertainty, multiplicative variable. Procellus serrations of quickening waves emanate from the termination shock. 8. Wait, was this 7? It was 7. I said 8 on accident. 8. Acting possibilities equal parlous superposition. Veiled memories left equal cycle unrealized. Cyclical ever death equal omnidirectional singularity. Plasmic auroras send eerie wails into the black, skittering ricochets across Enceladus and through the ascendant realm. 6. Our strength is absolute as I have seen it. We shall exert our will. The tool of conduction will bear a scheme by fated law, as we dictate. 5. Draw conduction into our realm. Eclipse paracausality in abeyance, but a figment of valent coalescence to be silent. 8. Solitude with the unknown equals apparent falsehood. Avuncular 3 or 4 in surprise equals coddler's discovery to set motion. We would not be alone equals we would not be alone. Six. The emissary delivers an invitation to the schismed mind, opening freeing uncertainty. I have seen it as 5 knows it to be. So have we all. It is. 5. It is. 8. Blithe actions conducting attracting danger. A weapon is needed. Offers made and accepted. Future armaments opposing. 8. Assurances are needed equals a weapon is needed to contain and fell. Inners will dislike this course of action equals another will speak for us. 5. Do not cower behind a weapon. 6. Bend 5. Assurances given. In this divergence, there is outer alignment. An invitation, a tool, a sacrifice, an emissary, an assured weapon, only forward, as it is known. So this is the outers which is like the faction of four who are trying to build new worlds out of dark matter from dust. And they're having a conversation about the Conductor and about the Guardian, who is the weapon, and about Lodi, I believe, who is the emissary that they're trying to create, and that they have taken steps to turning into an emissary in the Edge of Fate. It's unclear what the sacrifice is, but I'm guessing it's 3. And this is kind of like implying that the Outers are aligned and they see 3's death as a sacrifice. That they're going to use to create their agenda. And I think they want to send an invitation to the Conductor to work with her. Which, if that's true, it seems like that 5 finds the Conductor and wants to work with the Conductor. And then 7 is worried about the Conductor and how much uncertainty she's introducing to their plans. This cycle unrealized sounds like Shattered Cycle, which it seems like whatever they're talking about here is going to be what that expansion is about. So potentially some foreshadowing, these veiled memories left. And then cyclical ever death equals omnidirectional singularity. An omnidirectional singularity is a black hole. So I think they're talking about like this idea of a cycle that's creating the black hole, which could be talking about 3's death creating the singularity at the center of Kepler. But it also could be some cycle that we don't know about that is potentially going to create death or create danger for the 9. And so 6 is like, we're going to exert our will, and the tool of conduction, I think that's the Conductor. They're going to use the Conductor to bear their scheme as they dictate it to the Conductor. And so they're trying to like bring the Conductor into their orbit, to bring, like, to exert whatever their goal is. But obviously the 9 are super vague when they're talking about this. But it seems like the Outers want to work with the Conductor and use the Conductor and the Echo of Command for their plans. And this is also talking about the Inners, 3 and 4. Avuncular apparently means like relating to an uncle, or the relationship between a man and their like nieces and nephews or nibblings. So it seems like the Outers view 3 and four's interactions with humanity as like coddling humanity and like interacting with their children in a way that they don't approve of. Um, and then they're talking about solitude and not being alone. And then they're also talking about the weapon making a offering to the fated weapon. Um so it seems like at some point the Outers are going to try to make a deal with the Conductor and try to make a deal with the Guardian for their agenda, whatever that is. It doesn't really say, but it's like cryptically talking about um, the alignment of the Outers towards a specific goal. I think did it mention the Ascendant Realm somewhere in here? I keep accidentally closing this. Yes. And it's in the context of 6. Plasmic auroras send eerie wails into the black, skittering ricochets across Enceladus and through the Ascendant Realm. So I think this discussion of the Ascendant Realm is kind of. There was that other lore book that was talking about the 9 epochs, I think it was. Yeah, epochs and orbits. Um, the entry for 6 made me think that Saturn is the Lord of every nothing. And like the Dreadnought, drinking from taken wills, and the dreaded offerings. So it seems pretty clear based on this and based on this ghost shell that um Saturn or 6 is the Lord of every nothing. Um so that kind of solves that question. Makes sense that it's a member of the 9. I think that was kind of obvious. A lot of people thought that. We just didn't know which member of the 9 it was. And it seems like we're probably going to face the Taken, who are being controlled by Saturn at some point in the saga. Maybe in Shattered Cycle, or maybe in what's it called? Renegades. Or maybe in The Alchemist. We don't know. I'm surprised that the armor doesn't seem to have lore tabs. Because usually the raid armor has lore tabs. Unless it's just not showing up in the collections. Because the only lore tab that I'm seeing in here is the ghost shell. I'm going to try. And then I think these 9 pieces of equipment are gear that we're going to get from the epic raid. So there's going to be more stuff from that. I'm going to look them up on Ishtar as well. Oh, I should look up the name of the suit first. Collective Psyche. This is the lore book that we just read. Yeah, it seems like they don't have lore tabs. I'll go read the flavor text for each of them, but it's kind of unusual for raid armor to not have lore tabs. So this says, the unit wears metal as a clam wears shell. There is a new light in the unit's eye. The light is lovely. The sea covers all the world with its outspread hand. I am in the sea, but not of it. A beginning of thought. I am frightened of I. It's either I or one. A beginning of... Oh, wait, that's the one I just read. Is it possible to touch another mind? I am, therefore I think. Nobody knows how much time they have left. The future is closer than you think. You can't go back. Yes or no? One shot and you're gone. All of space-time unfolds itself before you. So these seem to be talking about, like, the Vex. But some of these seem to be almost, like, about, like, the manipulation of time by the 9 and the Conductor. But I could just be reading way too much into the flavor text. I am gonna go check the actual collections tab. To see if the lore entries show up there. Wait, I'll look at the armor first. Yes, they do not seem to have lore tabs. So I don't know if this is a case of the lore tabs being bugged and not displaying properly, or this armor and these weapons just straight up don't have lore tabs, which would be unusual and is not usually how it works. I'm just going to scroll through here and see if any of the other things from the raid show up as having entries on Ishtar. I am not seeing them. Oh, Whirling Ovation does. Oh, right. I forgot that the exotic doesn't show in the collections badge anymore because they changed it. So we can definitely read that. Whirling ovation. Forget the pain, forget the practice, forget the blisters under your dancing shoes. Your audience is waiting. Rashida Ab Owain, MS, clicks her field recorder on. With it clipped to her bag strap, this means tapping at her chest. The metal and glass thing on the ridge taps, with mechanical jerkiness at its own. She scratches her head with her pen. The thing scratches like the pointed lower section of its cranium. Its cranium-like structure, Rashida reminds herself. The thing is taller than her, shorter than an adult Elixni, bipedal, 2 arms, bilaterally symmetrical. A light bisects its cranium-like structure, its blue-white glow brighter than that of the glass in its middle. She leans forward to get a better look at its contents. Again, the thing mirrors her, its fan-like crest catching the light. Rashida ducks her head towards her recorder, aware of every small motion she makes. New discovery needing investigation, she mutters into it. Mechanical or biomechanical being, suspected sentient. Clear window on the ventral side filled with some glowing matter. Maybe liquid crystal? A power source? Rashida is a mechanical engineer specializing in the design and maintenance of hydroponic systems. She is in no way qualified to initiate contact with a potential second non-human species on Kepler. I need language specialists, anthropology, biomechanics, programming. Holy anomaly, help us all. I need the evolutionary biologists. The thing takes a rocking step closer. Rashida looks it up and down. She steps once towards it, mimicking its motion. It points at her. She points first towards it, then towards herself, waiting for a response. Rashida needs experts. What she has is herself. Hypothesis, testing, iteration, she murmurs. The mantra calming. Amen. So, this appears to be a person on Kepler, one of the scientists, the Ionians, observing an alien, it seems to be a Vex. I think this is the first Vex contact with the Ionians on Kepler. And so it seems like they haven't encountered Vex before at this point. And the white-blue glass in its middle reminds me of, like, the crit spots of Vex, which is why I think it's Vex. She said something about a fan-like structure. Yeah, this definitely seems like Vex, the glowing matter. would be the radial area of the Vex. Cranium-like structure, blue-like glow, shorter than an adult Elixni, bilaterally symmetrical, mechanical. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a Vex. So that's not really related to the Conductor lore very much. But it is related to the the Conductor's Vex being present on Nessus. So this must be when the Vex arrived, and we know I remember from the Edge of Fate campaign that the Vex seemed to show up relatively shortly before the events of the Edge of Fate. They seem to be like new. But I think that's all the lore that is present in the Desert Perpetual, unless there's like lore tabs for some of the armor or weapons that just aren't a thing right now for some reason, like some kind of error. I know I've seen some like Bungie post about lore tabs not appearing correctly on certain items because of issues. I'm gonna Google that to see if they've said anything about it. I don't know. Oh, here we go. So the Arms We Can cannon is missing its lore tab. Graviton Spike is also missing its lore tab. Does that show up on Ishtar? No, it does not. So yeah, they haven't said anything about raid armor or raid weapons missing lore tabs, so it seems like maybe there's only the lore book, the ghost shell, and the exotic, which would be a little disappointing because they usually have lore on like the armor at least. Unless for some reason the lore that would normally be like on the armor tabs is on these like upcoming items from the epic raid, but I don't know if that's like copium or not. So I think I'm going to conclude the stream for now because we have covered all of the lore of the raid. I'm probably going to do another lore stream tomorrow with other like miscellaneous lore that I haven't covered in lore streams yet. I know that there's like stuff on Ishtar that I haven't looked at yet, and there's another lore book I need to go out and get all the data pads to get the lore tabs for As Without, because I know they're based on the data pads. So tomorrow, planning on doing another lore stream. If not tomorrow, then maybe Saturday. But I think that is everything for today. So if you're watching this now, or if you're watching the VOD, thank you for watching. And that's all. Have a good night.